From Washington, D.C. to the heart of America, welcome to Mark Alford's America. I'm freshman congressman from Missouri, Mark Alford, and I believe in America. I believe in you, and most importantly, I believe that our greatest days are still ahead. You know, each week we take you behind the scenes to share the stories, news, legislation, most importantly, to meet the great folks who I have the honor of working with each and every day that I'm in D.C., helping shape our nation. And today we're talking with my friend, Congressman Tracy Mann. He serves the big 1st District of Kansas since January of 21. He's a tireless advocate for Kansas agriculture. He's a husband, father of 4, works to uphold Kansas's conservative values each and every day. He is a 5th-generation Kansas, born and raised on his family farm, and he really learned the value of hard work at a young age and really uses these experiences here in D.C. Before he was representing in Congress, he was the 50th lieutenant governor. In fact, we've got a little story about that, how I met Mr. Tracy Mann. And Tracy, good to be in your office here in Cannon Office Building.
Fantastic being with you, Mark. Thanks for being here. It's so fun to get to serve in Congress with you.
My honor. We're on a couple of committees together. We're on business committee, small business. We're on ag, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
And I appreciate real quick, Mark. You know, you came to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Obviously, you had an extensive background in media and in journalism and hit the ground running, doing a tremendous job representing your district. You become a leader in this town right away. It's truly an honor to call you a friend and to get to serve with you.
Let's go back a couple of years, how we first met. You want to tell that story?
Yeah, we did. So I became the lieutenant governor of Kansas, and my very first big interview, I got sworn in on a Wednesday. This would have been 2018.
Okay.
And that next morning at 6 o'clock, I'm from the other side of the state, so I had not heard of Mark Alford. It was on my calendar for me to pop into.
Go down to Fox 4.
Yeah, went to Fox 4 at 6 or 6:30 in the morning. I remember it was fairly early. I was with Governor Collier, and you did my first big interview. And I was impressed with you then. I've been impressed with you ever since. And I used to be scared to death of you.
Why?
Well, because, you know, when you first get elected to office, my background's business, not politics. You kind of have this perception that media and journalism, you always worry what you're going to say, what it could be like. But you did a fantastic job with the interview. And
well, thank you. You know, what I found in journalism, look, I was a big Mike Wallace fan. I grew up watching 60 Minutes. There's a certain place for that in journalism.
Yep.
But my goal was always to get to the truth and get to know the people in the short time that we had with them there in the studio. And I felt like then, as I do now, that you were a genuine person who truly cares, not about yourself, but serving your constituents.
Yeah, and it's an honor to get to serve. The other thing I remember the interview, I remember you standing up afterwards. You had your coat and tie on, and you were wearing blue jeans. I remember thinking, I like this guy.
Unfortunately, we can't wear jeans now.
Not anymore.
I used to not wear a tie at all. I'd drive my bosses crazy.
Right.
And I'd say, who wears a tie in the morning? No one wants to wake up and see somebody in a tie. And now I have to wear a tie every day.
You're that guy. You're now that guy.
Let's talk about why you wanted to run for Congress in the first place. Because you come from a very prominent family in Kansas, big ag family. What got you into politics?
You know, it's funny. Growing up, I never imagined I'd ever go to Washington, D.C., ever meet a congressman, much less get to serve with some. My very first summer off the farm was in 1998. I moved here to Washington, D.C. and served as then Congressman Jerry Rand's first ever intern. So he just got elected to Congress. I came out. I was his first intern. I remember literally my first summer off the farm. I remember they set me down first day. They said the office hours are from 9 to 6, and we take off the weekends. I remember thinking they work part-time here in Washington, D.C., right? I had free time for the first time in my life. You know, he really instilled in me a love for Kansas and Kansans that never left me. Went back, finished at K-State, did a career in business, became lieutenant governor of our state, and then ran for Congress.
How did you get to be lieutenant governor?
You know, I got appointed lieutenant governor. You know, the history would be in Kansas, Sam Bramnick was our governor.
Right.
He became Trump's ambassador of religious freedom.
Right.
And Jeff Collier, who's lieutenant governor, became the governor. At that point, the governor can appoint anyone in the entire state that he wants.
Why did he pick you?
It's a great question. We didn't know each other that well.
Yeah.
I get this phone call asking me to stop by Topeka. I said, what for? They said, we can't tell you. I said, am I in trouble? So I go to Topeka, sat down, and they said I was on a list to be lieutenant governor. And I was absolute deer, like, what are you talking about? But anyways, kept going through the process. I sat down with then Governor Collier, and literally told him why he should not pick me. And I said, look, if you're looking for a political insider, someone that understands, I'm not your guy. If you're looking for someone that loves Kansas, loves the country, wants to advocate for agriculture, he said, actually, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So we hit it off. He appointed me lieutenant governor. We served together. In fact, him and I traded text 15 minutes ago. So still a very close friend, and it was an honor to get to serve with him and then now to be in this role. So
this seat has led to the Senate for several people. Could that be in your future?
I'm focused on, one, getting this budget bill that has a lot of bad stuff in it. We're going to vote on here in a little bit. And this farm bill, not even thinking about the future. But if there's opportunities to continue to serve the country and the state in whatever capacity, we'll look at that at the time. Over your shoulder, there's a campaign sign that says "Strong for Dole."
Yeah.
So that's Bob Dole's first ever campaign sign. Wow. So, Bob Dole used to represent this district before Pat Roberts and Jerry Rand and Roger Marshall. So it's a true blessing to get to represent our district.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Washington right now. We are voting today by the time people will be listening to this, we will have voted on the remaining 6 appropriations bills. What do you think about the current way that we are doing business in Washington to pay the bills, fund the government, while trying to maintain some sanity and represent our constituents?
I don't like the bill. I don't like the process. And concerned about the future of the country. Mark, and we talk about this a lot. We're $34 trillion in debt. That's 34,000 billions. We cannot continue to spend money like this and not think that we have consequences. Unfortunately, that's what we're continuing to do. Part of that is process related. So we're, looking at this process, what that looks like. I'm in my 3rd year of Congress. Of course, you're in your 2nd year. And but we have a lot of work in front of us.
How do we change things? Because the speaker has said this is like turning an aircraft carrier. We have to do it slow and gradually. But we don't have time.
We don't have
time.
Time.
Slow and gradually.
Perspective. So I think it's important to understand. 2010, so 14 years ago, we have $13 trillion in debt. Mm-hmm. 2024, we now have $36 trillion that we've added in the last 14 years, $21 trillion in debt. I think, I'm a simple farm kid, right? So I calculate everything into dollars per person, and round numbers, 330 million Americans. That means that every $1 billion is $2.93 a person. So I ran up $3. So I just kind of in my head, every $1 billion we spend is $3 per American. So when things come up like spending for Ukraine, we've spent $110 billion so far. That's $330 per person. Asking for another $60 billion. So I think we got to start talking about this. What does this mean per person? Because these numbers are so big that it's just beyond what we can comprehend, and it's not good.
Of course, we want to help Ukraine. Putin cannot win this.
Correct.
At the same time, we have the previous Congress authorized and appropriated $113 billion, $67.5 billion dedicated to direct military assistance. This president has slow rolled out this thing. This thing could have been over had he gotten them the F-16s, the ATACMS, and the Abram tanks that they needed straightforward.
Yeah, I would have a lot of thoughts on that. One, of course, Putin's a thug, tyrant, and should not win. I think there's a direct connection between our withdrawal from Afghanistan and Putin's move on Ukraine. And that being, when we have this disastrous withdrawal, projected weakness on the world stage, I don't think anyone, Republican or Democrat, would look at what we did August of 2021 and say that was done how it should be. But I think when, that emboldened Putin to make this move on Ukraine, when America is not strong, Mark, in the world, I think it emboldens bad actors to do bad things. I'm concerned that President Xi in China, is looking at Taiwan, thinking about what he's going to do. Absolutely do not want Putin to win. At the same time, we spent $110 billion so far. There's not enough accountability, oversight, transparency in those dollars. There's also not a clear plan from the president on what is our end game, and that's where we're at right now.
I think we owe it to our constituents and the American taxpayers, number one, to let them know where the money's gone,
right?
Why this has been slow rolled, but most importantly, what is the end game? They still will not tell us what the end game and how long we're going to be at this.
What is our strategic objective, and when do we know when enough is enough? These are basic fundamental questions. We've asked this as you know, you and I and others have asked us repeatedly of the president, been unwilling to share that. Meanwhile, it's hard to get excited about supporting Ukraine, which we absolutely want them to win, securing their borders when we're unwilling to secure our own border right here in the United States of America.
You talked about weakness on the world stage. The solution is getting a strong, resolute leader behind the resolute desk, and that person is Donald Trump. Hey, listen, this is a fascinating conversation. We're going to continue it after a break. You're listening to Mark Alford's America. We're talking with Congressman Tracy Mann. When we come back, we're going to talk about China's influence on the ag sector, which affects us all in America, our border situation, the Small Business Administration, and what we're doing to try to kickstart them and get them off their rear ends to start treating Americans like clients. You're listening to Mark Alford's America. Stay with us. Welcome back to Mark Alford's America, where we give you a behind-the-scenes look at Washington, let you meet some of the folks I work with shaping our great nation. Today we're talking with Congressman Tracy Mann. We talked a little bit about Ukraine. I want to talk about the border now because it is crazy how this administration has basically welcomed almost 9 million illegal aliens into our nation. Why is Biden doing this?
That's the fundamental question, isn't it? Why? Has to be for votes long term. I mean, there's just no other way you can square that in your mind. But this is a national security issue. This is a human trafficking issue. All the fentanyl that's coming across and killing Americans. It just makes common sense to secure our border. No one that's listening to this would have a front door that doesn't even close, that just is wide open in their house. Yet that's exactly what we're seeing at our southern border right now.
Does it frustrate you as much as it does me that we acted upon this in a non-election year last year, although the Democrats want to say that we're trying to make it political? It's not. We passed H.R. 2 that would restore Remain in Mexico, that would finish the wall, that would end catch and release. And yet it's sitting over in the Senate. They're not doing anything with it.
The security of our nation is not political at all. H.R. 2, House Resolution 2, the Border Security Act, the best piece of border legislation that's been passed in this town for decades, for generations. It is a no-brainer that ought to be signed into law. Disappointing it's not bipartisan, but we are where we are.
And the Senate comes back with a bill that's totally unacceptable to allow up to 5,000 on average illegal aliens into our nation each day before we actually secure the border. And I keep saying, if you could do it, if those triggers could happen to secure our border, then you can do it now. This president has every thing he needs right now to secure our border.
That's all right. Sid, the president has everything he needs right now to secure the border. All he would have to do, if he would just reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy and also end catch and release, illegal immigration would plummet by 70%. And those things, can't be done by the stroke of a pen. You know that because they got undone by the stroke of Biden's pen. Literally the afternoon he took the oath.
93 executive orders that he really dismantled every positive thing that Trump did to secure our border.
Took the oath of office, went straight to the White House, and literally that afternoon reversed those two policies, which has led to this mess that we're in, and then takes almost 4 years to even go to the border, which is a clearly lack of focus on what the real issue is. Number one issue for Americans, rightly so.
Small business is the fabric of America. You have many small business owners, rural small business owners in your district, as do I. The Administrator Guzman finally came before our Small Business Committee. Last year, she refused to do so. What is lacking in the SBA? Why are they not functioning like they should to serve the American people?
A lot of issues, and it's a delight to get to serve. I sit right behind you at that committee, and we were there questioning her day before yesterday. I think part of the problem, Mark, is we have too many people in Washington that don't have real experience with small business, that don't truly understand the fabric of an entrepreneur, what it takes to start a small business, to keep it going, what these regulations and burdens need. And so you have administration that's out of touch with that of course translates into policies and regulations that are bad for our small businesses, bad for Main Streets, and in my district, your district, and across the country.
We have an administrator who doesn't really want to recognize how much theft there was in the PPE loan program, idle loans. Some are estimating it could be over $250 billion. They try to downplay it and say, it's only $34 billion, something like that. That's a lot of money. And yet the SBA is not in tune with trying to recapture and reclaim the taxpayer money.
$250 billion, back to what we said earlier, every $1 billion is $3 per person.
Yeah.
$250 billion is $750 per person in this country.
That is owed them.
Yes, and so we have an administrator that's not willing to go after that. You have to ask yourself why. It's infuriating to you and I.
Unacceptable. We serve on the Ag Committee.
Yep.
We are working on a farm bill. If you're listening out there right now and you're a farmer, producer, or maybe you're even on the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, we are working on a farm bill that is already almost 8 months overdue now at this point. You've signed an extension. Are you hopeful we'll get a farm bill done?
I am hopeful, optimistic. I think we will. Such an important bill. Remember why these are 5-year bills in the first place? I think this is important. They're 5-year bills because they need to be long enough to provide some certainty for producers, but short enough that they can be adjusted, adapted, and changed with the times. There's no question that the farming economy today, 2024, has changed a lot since 2018. The biggest change is our input costs. So we got to really adjust where the safety net's at, what that looks like, how we keep our production agriculture strong for the benefit of the community.
Well, again, part of this input cost, the cost that producers, farmers, ranchers have to put into their business in order to gain a profit. Okay, that's the input cost to make money. President Biden, with his demonization of fossil fuels, he tried to target fossil fuels. He ended up putting the crosshairs on the backs of the American farmers.
That's exactly right. And translate into higher diesel fuel prices, but also, the components of fertilizer, pretty simple. It's water, it's air, natural gas. So when you have a wage a war on our fossil fuels, the price of natural gas is going to skyrocket. Hence, the price of fertilizer is also going to skyrocket, and that's what the American farmer has to pay. And, there's always talk about sustainability. We can never forget the number one thing for sustainability in agriculture is profitability. If you don't have profitability, you will never have sustainability. And you see Biden do things like that, it leads to instability, unsustainability.
We had an interesting hearing this week in the Ag Committee about China and the threat from the Communist Chinese to our ag industry. What was your takeaway from that?
A lot of takeaways. One, I'm glad we were having the hearing. I think it's overdue. I think our country has been asleep for way too long on the threat that China poses to us. And, agriculture, we're very trusting. I wouldn't imagine stealing a piece of baling wire.
You probably didn't even lock your doors growing up.
We couldn't lock our doors if we wanted to. We literally don't have keys. My folks said we don't have keys.
But we have Chinese nationals coming to our country, going out into farmlands, physically stealing seeds,
pulling seeds
and taking it back to China.
Stealing it. I'm very worried about the Chinese stealing our livestock genetics, right? And the threats that poses. They are willing to cheat, steal, take advantage of us in a way that is unconscionable, not to mention owning large tracts of farmland near our military installations. Does anyone listening, think that we as Americans could buy tracts of farmland near theirs? Why in the world would we allow this to happen?
That's why we introduced the American Land and Property Protection Act, where we're saying that if you're a member of a foreign adversarial nation, China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, North Korea, Cuba, you cannot buy even an outhouse in the United States of America.
And shouldn't be able to. And this should be the easiest thing to come forward and get solved. Fortunately, we haven't been able to yet.
It's time to circle the wagons. What do you love about America?
Greatest country in the history of the world. Fundamentally, when Jefferson said, we hold this truth with some equal, all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, right? These famous lines. When he injected the words by their creator, first time in history, somebody stood up and said, look, our rights do not flow down from us from a king, or we say from government today. No. Our rights are innate in us because we are created by God. That little thought changed the course of human history. We've been at it for 248 years. We've got to stay vigilant. We got to make sure that we are doing the things in Congress as a nation that we need to do to make sure that we're strong for the next 250 years. That's why serving in Congress with you is such an honor to get to be part of that.
Well, same here, Tracy. It really is an honor. I love our camaraderie. You're also the chair, I don't know your title, but for the National Prayer Breakfast. We didn't even dip into that. You brought President Biden here and Andrea Bocelli in Statuary Hall, one of the most amazing moments to hear and the chaplain from the U.S. Senate. My goodness, what a morning that was.
And weekly, Republicans, Democrats get together in the House to pray together. Somebody shares about their life. You know, the underpinning of our whole society is our faith. Incredibly important that we continue to really focus on that and to return to that as a nation.
Hey, folks, thank you so much for joining us for Mark Alford's America. We'll talk again next week. Until then, remember, I believe in you. I believe that our best days are still ahead of us. And Tracy, man, I believe in America.
Me too.
All right.
Thanks,
love you, brother.